guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to talk about 8 totally free-to-play accessible champions that all of you guys can use, including one starting champion, a bunch of good champions you can farm right in the campaign inside this game, and a couple daily login reward champions. So the bad news about Raid Shadow Legends is, sure, if you really want to, scale to the end game and be in Platinum Tier Arena and clear all the level 20 dungeons in 1 minute or less, you're gonna have to spend a lot of money. But the good news is it's actually a fact that you can develop a really nice, respectable account, and you can progress to the end game without spending any money. There's been several of my viewers have actually done it here on this channel, so props to you guys. So today, the goal here is, whether you're just starting the game or whether you're a free-to-play player, we're gonna give you some options on how to build a very nice, balanced team without spending any money inside the game. Accessible champions. And even if you are a spender, these champions are still really great. I still even use a few of these champions on my main teams on my account. So let's start off by just going to the campaign. Champion number 1 that we're going to start about is all the way over here in, I believe it's level 11. Yes. Executioner, man. Executioner is really solid. Now, Executioner, in my opinion, is not end game viable, but he's certainly early and mid game viable, okay? I just want to kind of differentiate as we go through all these champions, how far you can actually run them into the game. So Executioner, if you weren't spending a lot of money, I think he can get you through all the daily login rewards. So you can kind of ride him to 270 days inside this game and still actually be using him, in my opinion. He's a good champion. I think he's underrated in some aspects as well. On the shield bash, he has attacks one enemy, has a chance of landing a stun. That's actually not a bad chance. 30% chance win booked of landing a stun, not bad for an A1. An attack-based champion. On his A2, attacks all enemies, decreases the turn meter by 20%, and then has a, 75% chance when booked of placing a decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. This scales off of attack and also a little bit of defense. You want to build him maybe with a defensive chest plate as well to help you out there, and then go crit rate on the gauntlets, go speed on the boots, and then look for attack substats, attack percentage on your substats. Go with a crit damage amulet on your Executioner. The thing I love about this ability here, right, is it has so much turn meter plus speed. Turn meter plus speed, in my opinion, is the holy grail of debuffs when we talk about kind of CC speed control, okay? So having the turn meter minus 20% and the decreased speed is really great to have on one ability. And then he has an increased defense and a counterattack buff on himself for 3 turns. This is on a 5-turn cooldown when booked. And that's going to be nice too, because the counterattack is going to have a chance of getting more of those A1s and more of those shield bashes off to land more stuns on your enemies. So all said and done, he also has a defense in all battles by 17%. You're gonna, especially in the early game, until you get like an apothecary, you're going to be wanting to run Executioner as your aura lead over your starting champion to only have the 15% HP in all battles. So really nice to have that defense in all battles on Executioner. He is a very underrated rare champion in my opinion. Champion number 2 is the Great War Maiden. She's one of the best debuffers that you can actually use until the end game. You can use her in Dragons 20. That's it. Like, she's incredible at what she does. That is landing the decreased defense, the strong version of it, on a 3-turn cooldown. That's exactly what we're looking for, and it has a 100% chance of landing, providing her accuracy is high enough. I didn't mention that on Executioner as well, but both these champions, for the turn meter, the stun on Executioner, and for the decreased defense on War Maiden, you want to build them, make sure you have an accuracy banner, ideally on these champions, or at least have their accuracy pretty high to make sure they're landing the turn meter, the stun, and the decreased defense. So again, 3-turn cooldown, she hits pretty hard too. War Maiden does have a pretty good multiplier on her attacks. She's really good for a rare, so she can be a debuffer slash nuker for your team. On her A2, Opportunity Strike has an increased attack buff on this champion and places an extra hit if the attack is critical. So 2 hits, the second one can't be critical. On the A1, she has a weak version of poison, not too bad again for dragons on War Maiden. So the next champion we have here is Stage 6 here. So Stage 6, you can get some speed gear in the early game. Early game Stage 6 is a nice place to spend your time and equip kind of your new champions with some speed artifacts, but it's Heiress. Heiress is what you're really after here. Heiress is a really solid rare champion who is solid in the mid game. On the A1, she grants an extra turn if the target is killed. On the A2, she has the big version of a 100% chance of landing increased speed on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown when you book her out. That's very valuable, especially if you don't have Apothecary yet, and she's removing 1 random debuff from all allies. Oftentimes, especially in the early and the mid game, you only have 1 debuff to worry about anyway, so it's nice to have the cleanse and the increased speed on a 3-turn cooldown. That's really, really solid. Her passive is counterattacks the attacker when an ally is attacked. So she's going to be counterattacking pretty much all the time, proccing extra turns if she ends up killing those targets. Put her to kit together and it's really, really solid, and she has speed in dungeons by 16%. Talked about the defense on Executioner. Let's talk about the speed on Heiress. You can use her as your speed lead in dungeons until you get a better option in the game. So Heiress is a really, really underrated kit in my opinion. Let's go to the 4th campaign champion I want to talk about here, and that is in Durham Forest, and it is Spirit Host. Spirit Host is solid again in the beginning and the mid game. You don't see Spirit Host in the end game really that often. It is a Spirit Affinity Dark Elf champion. She has speed in all battles by 10%, so that works outside of dungeons as well. On the A1, she has heals by 50% of the damage inflicted, not too bad. On the A2, she has increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns. That's a big version of increased attack on a 3-turn cooldown. Not bad. It's going to help your damage dealers out quite significantly. But she also has a full cleanse, removes all debuffs on all allies, and then places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 1 turn. Granted, it's only 1 turn, but that can help you out in the early game arena, and it can help you out in dungeons as well on a 5-turn cooldown. Block debuffs is a really strong buff in the game, but it's pretty rare to get a champion that has it on a really kind of like a Grizzled Jarl, right? Would be an upgraded version of a Spirit Host, certainly, right? Where he has the block debuffs and the increased defense. He doesn't have to cleanse though. So I think that for a support champion, Spirit Host can serve you very, very well again into the mid game. I want to talk about an obvious one, but he bears mentioning. We're talking about champions who are accessible to everybody in this game, so why shouldn't we talk about a starting champion, Kayle, right? Why not really quickly go through his kit? The thing about Kayle that's so great is that he is good. He's great in Dragon, he's great in Clan Boss, and he's great for a campaign farmer. So he has those ticks kind of all checked off, and he's good in Ice Golem too. He's serviceable in Ice Golem. So he has a combo of having the small version of poison on his A1, the big version of poison on his A3 on a 4-turn cooldown. Hits 4 times at random, has a 40% chance, 50% chance when booked on a 4-turn cooldown of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. And then his A2 Acid Rain, I think it's the the hardest multiplier out of all rare champions in the game. It's 4.65 multiplier, which is pretty good. Attacks all enemies, has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, and then fills the turn meter of this champion by 25% for each enemy killed. That's great. If you kill 4 enemies, boom, turn meter full again, right? You can go into his A1 or his A3 if it's off cooldown. Has HP in all battles. I still stand by. I think that Kayle is the best starting champion in the game. I don't think it's even that particularly close, although all the starting champions are decent. They're better than average, certainly, compared to other rare champions, okay? So that is Kayle. Next up on the list, let's go ahead and graduate a little bit here. We talked about Kayle, Heiress, Spirit Host, War Maiden, Executioner. Let's go to the Barbarians. Now we start getting into login rewards and when you can get, not Kalia, come on Ash, High Katun. When you can get High Katun, man, you're going to be looking really good. She is a beast. Going to help you a lot, right? She has speed in all battles by 19%, okay? Speed, all battles, 19%, really solid for a rare especially. On the A3, attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance, 75% chance when booked out of decreasing the turn meter by 15%. It's a great ability on the 4-turn cooldown. And then on the A3, she's making your enemies go slower. On the A2, she's making you all go faster on a 3-turn cooldown, fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%, and then places a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. On a 3-turn cooldown, you do have to book your High Katun. Very, very book worthy. You really want this on a 3-turn cooldown. That way you're constantly kind of buffing that turn meter and adding the increased speed on your other allies. You want her as fast as possible too. You want to build High Katun to be fast and ideally have a 100% crit rate on her as well, so she's doing a little bit of damage on her Shamanic Lightning ability. And then attacks 1 enemies, has a 25% chance, 40% chance when booked of placing a decreased speed debuff buff for 2 turns. So all about decreased speed, turn meter manipulation, and of course boosting your own turn meter. Katun is a perfect turn meter specialist on your teams, a great champion and a great aura lead as well. Next we have, geez, one of my favorite champions inside the entire game, guys. And we don't have to go far to check her out. It's Stella Drake, man. You have to wait a while to get her. I think she's the, what is she? The 180-day login reward? I forget what one it was, but she's amazing, man. She's one of my favorite champions in the game. She heals all allies by 10% of their max HP at the start of each turn. Also places a 30% increased speed buff on a random ally for 2 turns. She does that automatically. That's her passive, man. And then she has a revive an ally with 50% HP and an ally protect on them for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. We talked about this yesterday's video. Having that reviver on your team, whether it's a Stella of the Drakes, whether it's a Gorgorab, there's plenty of Reliquary Tender, whoever you have, it's so valuable because it allows you the luxury of taking some of those defense and HP percent of chest plates off of your damage dealers and putting attack damage on, knowing that if they die, it's not the end of the world as long as your team's not entirely wiped, because Stella Drakes can pick them back up. That's what you should kind of look to in terms of progression in this game. Attacks all enemies 2 times on a 3-turn cooldown. Each hit has a 20% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Again, the downside, the upside is she's free. The downside is she does need to be booked. You want to get this on a 3-turn. You want to get this to 35% chance stun. One of the best CC debuff in the game is stun. On the A1, she has a decreased speed as well, so really solid. Her damage, as you can see here, is based on defense. You definitely want to have a defense percentage chest plate on her. You want to have a high accuracy to land those stuns, and you want to have a lot of speed on this champion as well, so you can get her passive going, get the more increased speed buffs, get more heals on your team, and be faster to make sure we always have this Phoenix Wright ability on cooldown when we need it. So that is Stella of the Drakes. And last but not least, another one of my favorites. I was going to say an oldie but goodie, but she's actually pretty new there, Ash. But I used to talk a lot about her. I don't talk a ton about her anymore. And it is, why am I not, what is she, not a Dark Elf? Is she Undead Horde? Yeah, Darkelaine, my bad. I thought she was a Dark Elf for a second. Darkelaine. She's another daily login reward champion, and she is great, guys. She's an epic champion, but she's a rare champion in the sense that if there was ever a champion that I would consider building out with attack percentage boots on, it might be Darkelaine for Ice Golem or for the Arena, because she has a cool passive here that instantly activates her big, hard-hitting ability, Death's Majesty, whenever an ally receives a freeze debuff. So against Ice Golem, for example, who lands an AoE freeze, she can sometimes just go absolutely off the wall, just go ham on him, right? Because she's proccing every time those freeze debuffs land, every time, or freeze once per turn, of course. She's going to be proccing Death's Majesty, places an increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns, then attacks all enemies. Also has a 75% chance when booked of placing the decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. So it's a hard-hitting AoE attack ability. She is a nuker who's a little bit niche because she does have, again, that passive that kind of synergizes very well as an anti-freeze champion. She's also a good an option against Tormund inside the arena. So instantly removes any freeze debuffs on this champion, replaces them with increased crit rate, increased crit damage, strengthen buff whenever an enemy places a freeze debuff on this champion. That's really solid. She's just stripping away the freeze, putting all these increased crit rate damage and strengthen buffs on herself, and then also has a chance of, when your allies are frozen, again, proccing this really hard-hitting AoE attack ability. So I really like Darkelaine as well. These 8 champions, guys, there's more too. They just announced, they just actually released a bunch of more daily login reward champions. I'm going to save these guys for another video, these 3 champions, just because, let's face it here, I want this video geared more towards like early and mid-game players, and early and mid-game players have not been playing for 210 to 270 days. I thought I was already probably pushing it with Stella Drakes. So guys, that's going to do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys watching all the way till the end. I'll see you tomorrow with another one, and as always, take care, guys.